Over the past few years, I feel like I have been inundated with a specific news story about garbage. Well, really, it's a story about recycling. It all started a few years ago when China, which at one point was accepting 50% of the United States' recycled plastic, decided that they would no longer accept such a high volume. And China's ban was followed by a number of South Asian countries, which forced the United States into a very difficult situation. What would be done with all of those empty yogurt containers and week-old magazines? What happens if our waste can no longer simply be sent away? I learned about this issue in March of 2019, when the New York Times reported that hundreds of US cities had either suspended their recycling programs or had made dramatic cuts. I felt betrayed. I had memorized the 3 R's in grade school: reduce, reuse, recycle. But what would the 3 R's be without a bin to separate our paper and our plastics? All of a sudden, it felt as if recyclables we had thrown away had been dumped back on our heads. What do we do when we discover that we can no longer banish our trash to a far-off land? And of course, this is about more than just garbage. What will we do when we discover that we cannot banish the parts of ourselves that we wish we could simply throw away? When we find out that teshuvah is not a process that allows us to separate from the icky parts of ourselves, what do we do? These high holidays, these Yamim Noraim, are all about these questions. How do we make commitments for a new year when we will be forced to confront the dirty laundry of the past year? It might even feel like our negative qualities are taking up too much space even to breathe. And all of these sins we'll be listing, do we really ever rid ourselves of these sins? Sure, I'm wearing this pure white kittel, pounding my chest, jumping and dancing, ready to begin this year anew. But do my jagged edges ever really become smooth? On Yom Kippur, we pray hoping to re-enter the world as new people. But teshuvah on this day is not an escape from ourselves. It is a turning back into ourselves, a turning back into the beautiful, mysterious, flawed, and broken people that we are. The Torah portion that we'll read later today prescribes a ritual imagining a fantasy of escape. Aaron, the priest, takes 2 goats, designating one as a sin offering and another to be banished to the mysterious wilderness of Azazel. This second goat will carry all of the sins of the Israelites and will be sent far off to ensure it cannot possibly ever return. Because what would be more scary than having to confront all that we intended to cast off? The sages of the Mishnah add more details to the ritual, wanting to ensure that indeed the sins of the people have truly been banished. The one leading the goat takes a crimson thread and ties one end to a rock and the other tied to the goat itself. A similar crimson thread was tied to the door of the temple, and when the goat finally died, the thread would turn white, and the Israelites would know that their sins had been banished forever. Today, we have no crimson thread, and the truth is that the rabbis could not really rely on this thread either. We know what happens when people try to use goats to erase their problems. When Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery, they took his coat of many colors and dipped it in the blood of a goat. Brothers unreconciled, they attempted to use the goat to end their strife. And we know that Joseph did not disappear. He ended up becoming the only key to the brothers' survival through a terrible famine. The Yom Kippur ritual is a drama that we play out each year. It's a fervent wish for certainty and for clarity. The ritual is meant to inspire us to look deep into ourselves. But in its retelling, it is also an acknowledgement that a true banishment of our brokenness is impossible. We wish that the sins we're trying to expel will not return. Year after year, though, our experience is quite different. How many of us, time after time, fall into the same traps, finding what we see as our faults popping up again and again? We can't really escape who we are. So, what then is the point? Why do we spend all of these hours, some of us literally trying to pound the bad out of us? I think the work of teshuvah only comes when we lean into the truest, most honest parts of ourselves. Our recycling can no longer be sent to China. We're going to have to figure out ways to reuse the components of ourselves and turn them into beautiful treasures that make us, well, us. We can't cast away our anger, but we can learn to channel it into a righteous anger for good. We can't cast away our pride, but we can learn to turn it into a healthy sense of self-worth. We can't cast away our jealousy, but we can learn to turn it into a clear articulation of our values. Maybe it is like recycling, every sin being transformed into something new. Let us engage in this teshuvah, a teshuvah of radical self-love, an understanding that we have everything we need for this moment, that the parts of ourselves of which we are trying to rid, may that be the molding clay for our next great chapter. The meditation teacher, John Kabat-Zinn, encourages this practice, which I think I will hold on to this Yom Kippur. He says, breathe and let be. In your mind and in your heart, give yourself permission to allow this moment to be exactly as it is, and allow yourself to be exactly as you are. Then, when you're ready, move in the direction your heart tells you to go, mindfully and with purpose. Breathe and let be. So let us continue this journey into our wonderful, magnificent selves. Shana Tova.